I know what you're thinking. What would Ziggy do?
Hi, everybody. My name is Dave Bazanko, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the backstory about why this channel exists. Now, it's going to be a little bit of a longer video, so I invite you to lean in, listen to the story. Maybe you're going to glean some things that you may not have ever learned in business school. Maybe you're going to learn some things about finance, about health, about well-being, about your career. You're going to learn all kinds of things from me, from my 35 years experience in business. Some of the failures, some of the setbacks, and some of the things and lessons that I've learned to be successful. Now, I'm going to take things back to about 2006, almost 20 years ago. And at that time, I was turning 40 years old. I'm 58 now. And I had been doing business for about 5 years with two of Canada's largest big box stores. And while I was doing business with them, I was actually selling my own private label. I owned the brands Hockey Mom and Hockey Dad in Canada. And we sold those products to these two big box stores. And we had done that for about 5 years, and we kept doubling our orders every year. So it didn't feel uncomfortable. It didn't feel like I was taking a big risk in doubling my order every year, because we always sold out. We always made our money. We always made our profits. Everything was good. But around 2006, I inherited a new buyer at one of my stores, or at one of my customers. And this new buyer saw the economic crisis on the horizon of 2007 and decided that he didn't want to bring any private labels into the store, meaning that he only wanted to sell sporting goods that had, Nike, Reebok, Adidas, the big brand labels attached to them. Smaller vendors, he wanted to squeeze out of the stores. So by doing that, he allowed us to go and build $300,000 worth of inventory, move it from offshore to our warehouse in Brampton, Ontario, pay for it to sit in inventory, pay to have it built, pay to have it sit in inventory, and not have a single dime come in, because he did something behind the scenes that I didn't realize for about a year. We went through a whole buying season with our inventory sitting in a warehouse, and not a single unit got ordered by any of the stores that we had previously sold out across the country every single year. And every time I called up the buyer to talk to him about it, he said, "Don't worry, the orders will come." Unfortunately, what he didn't tell me is what he did in the background. Now, to make ends meet, because I was running out of cash, I had a one-man show. I was 40 years old. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't come from money. I had built everything myself. I had $300,000 that was evaporating very, very quickly, and I had leveraged my home against that order. So what happened? Well, I started going to hockey tournaments every weekend, trying to sell off their products as best I could to make cash flow, to make my mortgage payment every month. And that worked to a certain extent, except I still couldn't understand why for 5 years we were selling out and all of a sudden nobody was taking our orders. Now, when you do business with a big box store, you have to sign a vendor agreement. And in that vendor agreement, one of those stores or one of those companies does not allow you to speak to their store managers and owners. You have to go through the buyer. So being respectful of the vendor's agreement, I never reached out to the store to try to understand what the problem was. I just trusted that the buyer was doing the right thing on my behalf. But after a year went by, and we still had 3/4 of that inventory sitting in a warehouse, still paying for it, I finally decided we are about to go bankrupt, and I don't want that to happen. I've got to find a solution. So I picked up the phone and I started calling stores. And it took about 3 stores until I finally got to speak to one of the general managers. And I said, "Hey, man, you guys took my product for 5 years in a row and it sold out." He goes, yeah, I remember your product. It was fantastic. So help me out. Tell me why you stopped bringing my product into your stores. And he said, "Well, let me have a look." And he got into the system in the computer and he started looking and he went, "Well, I'll tell you exactly why I didn't bring your product into the store anymore. You doubled your price." I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Yeah, right here. Last year, you doubled your price. You went from $22 a unit to $44 a unit." I said, "I've never doubled my price. As a matter of fact, for 5 years, I've not raised my price." He said, "Really?" And then he gave me a phone number to the vice president of the company. He said, "I want you to call this gentleman. and I want you to tell him exactly what you just told me. So I called him up and I said, hey man, like, this is what happened. And this is unconscionable that your company would do this to one of your vendors. You literally sold us out and sabotaged our company by doubling the price, ensuring that your stores would not bring our product in. He sat there for a minute and said, how much inventory do you have left? And he wrote me a check to buy the rest of the inventory. And at this point, we had maybe $120,000 worth of inventory sitting there. And we had debt that exceeded that just on the purchase leverage of buying the order. So he said, I'll write you a check, but you've got to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, meaning you can never talk about this in public ever. So I signed the NDA, I got the money, and I went ahead and I was able to salvage what I could of our financial mess that we were in. Now, the challenge with that was, all these years later, I'm still digging out of that financial hole. It's very, very difficult to get yourself into a position of financial debt and dig out. And I've had some helpful people along the way try to help me get out of that financial hole, from my accountant to other business associates who tried to put me onto the right path. But I'll tell you, if you've ever struggled with finance, if you've ever tried to run a business and had that business fail, it is an extremely difficult place to come from, both emotionally and financially. Now, on top of that, at that time, because of exactly what happened, the banks didn't want to risk financing my orders. I had to leverage my house against those orders. Well, I was also at that time working at an automotive factory, working 3 shifts, midnights, afternoons, and days, revolving through that to help pay for my mortgage while I tried to figure out the financial mess of my company, which simply meant I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating properly, I certainly wasn't exercising. I was a perfect cocktail for heart disease, and I didn't know it. I had always been healthy in my youth. I never thought heart disease might be an issue, but around the time I turned 40 and all this was going on, I started having stress-related symptoms. And one day I thought I was having a heart attack. The ambulance took me to the hospital. They checked me out and they said, Dave, now I weighed 220 pounds at that time, which is about 50 pounds overweight for me. They said, Dave, we got good news and bad news. The good news is you didn't have a heart attack today. The bad news is you're really close. And when I explained what my situation was, they said, well, you've got all the hallmarks for somebody who's set them up for failure in life. You've got a failing business that's causing stress. You've got health conditions, lifestyle health conditions that are totally manageable, that you're not managing very well, that are causing you stress. You've got a business that's causing you stress. And within that business, I'd also, the year prior to all this going down, had to walk away from my best friend, my best man at my wedding. I lost that relationship because of business. We did not see eye to eye on the future of the business. And to this day, 18 years later, we barely speak. As a matter of fact, he's never reached out to me in 18 years. I've reached out to him a few times, and I think about him all the time. It's like a divorce. I've never gone through a divorce, thankfully, but it certainly feels like something like that. When you lose somebody who was so important in your life and they just walk away from you, that's a killer. So in all 4 areas of my life that will dictate whether or not you're happy and successful and, have a little stress in your life, it's that financial, that physical, that personal, that professional, those 4 things. If we can get control of those 4 things, good things start to happen. So, very long story short, the only thing that I thought I could really do to get control over any of those 4 things was immediately take care of my health. And I thought exercise, just like when I was in high school, I'm going to exercise. That's what we always did. That's somehow going to solve my problem. So I went out and I started walking every day. I said, from this day forward, I am going to walk 5 kilometers every day. And it didn't take very long for that to get boring. It took about 3 weeks. So then I said, okay, I think I can do some running here. So I decided to go out and start to run. And I remember walking to one telephone pole, running to a telephone pole, walk to a pole, run to a pole. After a couple of days, I went, okay, I'm going to walk one, run two, walk one, run two. Then I started going walk one, run three, and so on and so forth. And it took about 4 weeks until I was actually slowly jogging through 5 kilometers. And I remember, like, this is this monumental thing in my life. I used to hate running. And here I am out running every day, built myself up to running 5 kilometers. I mean, can you imagine running 5 kilometers? I remember doing my very first 5K run and being so happy and impressed with myself. My son videotaped the whole thing. I was ecstatic. I was over the moon. Little did I know what was about to unfold. One of my good friends, Michael, who was a marathon runner, said, "Hey, Dave, if you can run 5K and you've been running, this distance for the last 6 or 7 months, come and do a 10K with me." And he said, all you got to do is build yourself up to running like 7K. The race is in a month's time. You'll get there. So I remember said, okay, why not? I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. I've been doing this running thing, 5K. I'm going to go run 10K. So we signed up for the Grimsby Peach Bud race. And I remember I'd only run 7 kilometers. That's the maximum I'd ever run. And I was so intimidated. This was the first real race, where they had food and they had race bibs and there were runners there. And it was very, very intimidating. And Michael showed me the ropes and we went off on our race. And he said, look, I'm going to run my pace. You run your pace. We'll all meet up at the finish line. So I remember running. And as I was going past the 7-kilometer marker, because every kilometer was marked, the Grimsby High School band was playing there. And it was just an exciting atmosphere. And I had 3 kilometers to go. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what's going to happen. I could die in another kilometer. I don't know what's going to happen. But I remember that moment of just feeling both scared and excited and exhilarated. And before you know it, the 10K were done. I had no issues finishing the race. And I said to Michael, I said, okay, that was awesome. Let's go. He said, nope, you don't get it. We got to hang around and cheer people in. That's part of the deal. It's not just about you. It's about everybody. It's about the community. That was my first experience ever feeling like I was part of a fitness community. And it was awesome. And I totally give the kickstart to this journey of wanting more and doing more to Michael for inspiring me to go out and run that first 10K with him. Now, fast forward about 3 years, I had built up to the point where I was running 20 kilometers, half marathons every single day. And that just became my new norm. So I was out running one day and I happened to be at the top of a hill and I literally bumped into an Ironman triathlete. He was this older guy, white hair, and he introduced himself as a doctor. He was riding a bike and he had this ratty old Ironman t-shirt on. And he was waiting for his wife to kind of catch up to him on the top of this hill that we had both sort of met up at. And I'm not a shy guy. I looked at him and I thought, Ironman, like that's for like elite athletes or something. What the heck is that? And I looked at him and said, have you really done that Ironman thing? And he said to me, he spent 5 minutes with me that changed my life forever. He said, Dave, he said, I used to be a runner just like you. And then I realized if all I did was run, it wasn't a matter of if, but when I was going to get hurt. And that really resonated with me because after running for about 3 years now and longer distances every day, I was starting to develop some nagging injury issues. Nothing that would stop me from running, but my back was getting sore and there were things that were aching that shouldn't be aching. I was tearing my body down and not giving it a chance to rest. I knew, again, I was just doing what I learned in high school. I knew nothing really about running. So this idea of triathlon, having, a couple of sports to fall back on, was sitting in the back of my head. And now fast forward to that fall, I think it was November, actually it was October. The Ironman was on TV, the World Championships. And I was in my house. I had bought a treadmill at this point because I didn't like running outside in bad cold weather. And in October, it happened to be this day. It was a Saturday. It was kind of rainy and cold outside. And I remember on the treadmill, I was flipping through the TV and the Ironman was on TV. And I'm looking at this guy running on TV and I'm on my treadmill. And I'm thinking, well, he's running, I'm running, I can do that. And I've ridden a bike before, I can do that. And I've swam before, I haven't drowned. How hard can this thing really be? So I literally got off my treadmill and I went into my office, got on my computer, and I found the closest Ironman to me. And in a moment of passion, I signed up for Ironman Muskoka 70.3. I had no idea what that even meant. I didn't know what 70.3 meant. I just thought all Ironmans were the same. I had signed up for this race. I didn't own a bike. I thought I could borrow my neighbor's 10-speed bicycle. I didn't know at this point, I didn't know how to swim. But I made a commitment. I signed up for it. I had a vision that I was going to cross that finish line, or that I would even be in shape enough to get to the finish line to have the opportunity to cross the finish line. I was the type of person who could commit to that sort of destination, that goal. So here I am, signed up, and my son's high school had a pool, an indoor pool. And I remember going with him. He was in grade 9. He was going to one of his rowing workouts in the morning. And I said, well, I'm going to go with you, but before your rowing starts, just videotape me in the pool. I'm going to start swimming. So before his workout started, he came onto the pool deck with me, and I jumped into the water. And you know who swims at 6 o'clock in the morning for the most part? Old people. And when I say old people, I mean, think of your grandparents. And there was this one woman, and she had this, this rubber swim cap on with the flowers on it that sort of stuck off the swim cap. And it was like looking at my grandmother, and I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? But I jumped in the first lane, and Warren was there with the video, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm Mr. Ironman. I'm going to go and show them all how it's done here. Put my goggles on. I didn't have earplugs in because I didn't really realize that I was the type of person who needs to have earplugs, because if I didn't, it would be like water going into a toilet, flushing and going in my ear every time I turn my head sideways. So here I am. I got in the water. I start swimming. Warren's videotaping me. And all of a sudden, I have this moment of complete panic. I grab the wall of the pool. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I don't know how to swim. I seriously don't know how to swim. I can't even swim the length of one pool, let alone 2 kilometers, because a 70.3 Ironman is half the distance of a full Ironman. What the heck was I thinking? But I had spent hundreds of dollars to register for this race. And if I hadn't done that, I probably would have quit that day. But I put my money where my mouth was. I made a commitment, and I said, I'm going to finish this thing. And I remember Warren sitting there with his video camera going, come on, Dad, you're embarrassing me. Let's go, swim. Okay. I ended up swimming down to the end of the pool, taking a break, turned around, and there she was. The woman with the flowery swim cap, swimming nice and steady, giving me the evil eye. You think you're hot stuff, eh? That's what I got from her. And it was so humbling, but such a great, memorable moment for me, because I approached swimming the same way I approached running. I said to myself, how did I learn to become a half marathon runner every day? I did that by going out and running to one telephone pole, then the next, then the next. So when I came to the pool, I said, okay, I'm going to swim one length, take a break. Swim another length, take a break. And I'm going to build up to the point where when I don't have to grab the wall anymore, I'll swim 2 lengths, take a break, then 3 lengths, take a break. It literally only took me about 2 months where I went from 0 to being able to swim 2 kilometers. Now, I'll tell you, it wasn't pretty, but I got it done. And I started feeling really good about myself. But remember, I was in an indoor pool. Fast forward now to probably June, because the race was in August. And here in Canada in June, the water is probably 62 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, relatively cold. But the good news is we're wearing wetsuits. That keeps your body warm and helps keep you afloat while you're in the water. Now, where we swim locally here as triathletes is in one of the original Welland canals. And for those of you who are watching from all over the world, there's a canal that connects Lake Ontario with Lake Erie that the ships go through to bring goods from the ocean inland. And we're now in the 3rd version of that canal, but the 2nd version of that canal is now a recreational waterway. And it's a beautiful place to go and swim. The problem is I hadn't been doing very much open water swimming in my life. As a matter of fact, I'd done pretty much zero. And even though I could swim 2 kilometers in the pool, it was a completely different beast getting out into murky water where I could see seaweed, I could see fish. I saw one badass water snake that has traumatized me for life. And you start to see those things. And when you're swimming in the open water, you're dealing with waves, you're dealing with wind, you're dealing with rain, all kinds of nastiness. But here's the thing. I had to learn by doing the work how to control my anxiety. That was such a stress-inducing environment for me. I could barely take a stroke without having a panic attack. And the fun thing is when I'm sent out by Triathlon Ontario to talk to runners and inspire them to become triathletes, they usually say, the first thing they say is, I'm never going to do an Ironman or even a triathlon because I hate swimming. And I just usually will talk to one person, just like I'm talking to you, about this experience of swimming. And then I'll pick my head up and look around. There's usually like 30 people listening to the story, which means I know I'm resonating with people. There's a lot of people who are scared of open water swimming. But the point is, you're never going to get further in life if you don't get uncomfortable. So for me, becoming an Ironman was all about getting uncomfortable, not only in the run, going further than I've ever gone before, in the swim, going from learning how to swim in a pool to open water swimming to then going and swimming in the ocean eventually, which is one of the races that I did, to learning how to ride a triathlon bike for 6 hours in the aero bars. Not an easy thing to do. But again, such an enjoyable experience becoming an Ironman. And in becoming an Ironman, I learned quite a few things. And the first thing is I learned about periodized training. Now, what's periodized training, you might ask? What Ironman athletes do is every year, around this time of year, right now it's the 1st of November, 2024, what we normally do is we look ahead for a year and go, what race are we going to do next summer? And then we map back the months from today until that race day. And it might be, 9, 10 months, whatever it might be. And we systematically plan from race day back how we're going to build through the season in a periodized way so that we never get injured. We keep adding more and more volume to the routine that we do. We know exactly what we're doing every day. It's very process oriented. It's very systematic. You can't play catch up with the process or you will get injured. Now, this is really cool because when you learn to become a triathlete, you start to understand how your body works. You understand that triathlon is about swim, bike, run, nutrition, rest, and recovery. Now you're saying, hey, Dave, that's good for you. I'm never going to be a triathlete. And I appreciate that. This isn't for everybody. But the process that I'm going to be talking about, the process of becoming more resilient is this. Create a vision. My vision at the time was I wanted to finish an Ironman. I had to assume the identity of an Ironman by doing things that Ironman do every day. That's the process. The proof that I was moving forward was that I could check the metrics. I could check the boxes and see that I was getting physically stronger and my endurance was building and I was getting closer to realizing my dream every day. But the reality is, real world sometimes gets in your way. Fortunately, it hasn't happened for me on race day, but it happens for many athletes where they have accidents, injuries, unforeseen circumstances that get in the way. And you just have to learn how to deal with those adversities when they arise. And when they arise, you have to ask yourself, okay, has my vision changed? If your vision hasn't changed, it's simply you need to have an iterative process to figure out what changes you need to make to your process every day so that you can, again, start looking at the proof to see if you are moving forward. Now, where I was in my life was I was stuck, right? If you think of those 4 areas, our personal resilience, our financial resilience, our professional resilience, what did I say? Personal, professional, financial, I'm missing one. Business, financial, physical, business, and personal. Those are the four. Again, this is unedited. I will be making mistakes throughout this, and I'm not going to edit it because I think it's worthwhile for everybody to kind of know that this is a real deal I'm doing here. So, you've got to be able to apply that formula to all four of those areas. I have a vision for my health. My vision is that when I'm 80, 90 years old, I can still play with kids who are 25 years old. Maybe I'll be playing with my grandkids at that point as a triathlete with them, because I now know people in my life who are doing that. You see, you're the sum of the people that you surround yourself with. And forever, for most of my life, I was surrounding myself with people who did not take health and well-being seriously. And there was no fault of their own, just that's who they were surrounded by. And growing old was supposed to look like this awful thing. And I just don't buy into that, because I've realized now that by investing in myself first, financially, physically, professionally, and personally, when I do that, I then have the energy and the time and the resources to let everything else fall into place. So when I think of the Ironman experiences that I've had, I've got three major takeaways. My first real full Ironman was in 2011. It was in Louisville, Kentucky. And even just finishing that race taught me that anything is possible. Anything you put your mind to, so long as you've got a vision, a process, and a way to measure the progress, anything is possible. The second lesson I learned, unfortunately, one of the racers right beside me passed away in the race. He drowned. As a matter of fact, he didn't drown. He had a panic attack and a heart attack in the water. How do I know this? Well, on race morning, we were all lined up to get into the water. It wasn't a mass start. It was an individual start, and you had to get in this big, long line. So we were in Louisville, in this park, waiting in line, this big snaky line. And when the bell went off, the line started moving, and one by one, we all sort of ran down this dock. It was a little marina. And as we're running down the dock, the very first sort of boat we passed was the sheriff's boathouse. And as I was running past it, I saw all kinds of commotion going on. But I thought, yeah, that's something on shore. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm going to be an Ironman today, and off I go. And we all started running down, and we jumped into the water, and I started swimming. And within 30 seconds to a minute, I passed this big commotion. And it was a bunch of people hanging on to one of the paddle boards, one of the lifeguards. Now, in the Ironman, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to grab onto a paddleboard if you're having a panic attack, so long as you don't get moved forward. That's all legal. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't believe how many people are having a panic attack in the water. But I went off, I did my race, I finished the race that day. And when I got home, one of my friends, Lou, said, hey, were you in that race down in Louisville? And I went, yeah. He goes, did you hear about the guy who died? I went, what are you talking about? Yeah, some guy from Buffalo died. Now, Buffalo is 20 minutes away from me on the other side of I'm on the Canadian side. Buffalo's on the American side of the border. So I immediately went to the newspaper and I looked up a couple of interviews. And most of the mainstream media said, another unfortunate incident where people got themselves into trouble by putting themselves in situations they shouldn't have put themselves into. You never know if there's an underlying health condition. And they really position this as a very negative thing. Of course, it's negative. The guy died. But I then read an article from his father. His father got interviewed. And he said, Mark was an accomplished athlete. Mark was an accomplished swimmer, particularly. But Mark didn't like the open water. As a matter of fact, it made him uncomfortable. So he never trained in the open water. And when he went to Louisville, that was actually his first real open water swim. Now, I can tell you, when I got into the water, into the Ohio River, the water was so brown and murky, I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. It was like bath water. It was so warm. And at one point, after I had passed Mark in the water, I literally swam into a piece of rebar. It hit me in the chest. And I reached down and went, yeah, that's rebar. Pushed it aside and kept going. Now, because I had spent so much time in the Welland Canal getting uncomfortable swimming and learning how to deal with panic attacks, learning how to get comfortable, I was able to stay comfortable during that swim and get out. Unfortunately, Mark didn't learn that skill. He wasn't prepared for that outcome. He didn't think it was a possibility. And unfortunately, like I said, Mark did pass away in that race. So the big lesson that I took away to my next race in Cozumel was be better prepared. Now, what's interesting is when I finished that first race, I talked a lot in that point in time in my life about trying to get happy. I was in search of happiness. I was just so frustrated with so many things in my life. The only good thing I had going on in my life was my family. My wife, who I'm still married to 34 years later, love each other to death, my best friend, my kids were healthy. Everything family-wise was awesome. But everything else from friends to finance to business to professional growth to my well-being, yeah, that was starting to take a right turn, a good turn. But I was still like really, really challenged by everything that was going on around me. And I thought to myself, okay, when I cross this finish line, then I'll be happy. And I remembered I'm in the Ironman and thinking to myself, I was so excited, I didn't pay attention close enough in the athlete briefing. And I didn't realize at any point that this was a 2-loop race. I thought it was an out and back race on the run. And sure enough, did the swim no problem, got on the bike, got dehydrated, got nauseous. I wasn't prepared for the road conditions. I wasn't prepared to handle my nutrition on the bike properly. I learned how to do that later. But I got out on the run. And the funny thing was, I did the first loop, and as I'm coming in, I'm seeing the finish line. The band's playing. I'm thinking, man, marathons are a piece of cake. This was like 3 hours. That's like I did a 3-hour marathon. How cool is this? And then I get to sort of the top of the finishing chute, and there was a guy beside me who wasn't there anymore. And I'm looking around. And I'm like, where did that guy go? And there was a volunteer standing there at the top of the running chute. And I said, there was a guy beside me. He's not there anymore. Where did he go? And she went, oh, he probably went to do his victory lap. Now, a lot of the smaller races that I had done, sometimes they do an extra lap of a parking lot or a building to make it the proper distance. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, I got to do a little run around the block, come back into the finishing chute. So I do my little run around the block, and then I realize, wait a minute, I'm on the same run course that I was on 3 hours ago. What's going on? And I says to the guy beside me who's running, I says, is this like a full 42-kilometer marathon? He went, yep, it's a full marathon. He says, what loop are you on? Did you just start? And I went, well, no, I started 3 hours ago. And he goes, oh, you're on your second loop then. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. There are 2 loops. You mean this 3-hour half marathon was an hour longer than the worst marathon that I've ever run in my life? And that's when I had my lowest moment in my first Ironman. I started the pity party. I started walking because I did the math in my head. I probably had still 5 hours to do the race in before the race was over. I was going to finish, whether I walked or ran. Didn't matter. I was having a pity party. And there was a guy there from Canada. We all have on our bibs where you're from. I sort of caught up to him. He was walking. I'm thinking, I'm going to walk and talk to this guy. So we're talking, and he was injured. That's why he was walking. And I'm not injured. I'm just feeling sorry for myself. And we walked for about 15 minutes. And finally, I decided, you know what? I got more in me here. I can't just keep walking like this. I got to go. I'll tell you, I've never experienced as much pain starting to run again at that point than I've ever experienced in my life. Not even when I was starting to run and couldn't walk downstairs because my muscles were so not used to what I was doing. This was a new kind of pain. But I persevered. I pushed through. I got to the finish line. I crossed that finish line. I turned around to see 13 hours and 57 minutes. I had just come under 14 hours, and I got 18 hours to do the race. You would think that I would be happy. But I literally looked at that time and within 10 seconds thought to myself, 14 hours? I can be way faster than that. Immediately, what I did, without even realizing it, was I took a year's worth of waiting to be happy, actually probably 3 years worth of waiting to be happy, thinking that happiness will come when I cross that finish line, and I completely pushed it over the cognitive horizon, right? I basically said to myself, I'm not going to allow myself to be happy until I do this right. So even though I finished an Ironman and I should have been happy, no, I didn't do good enough. I'll be happy when I do a better time. I didn't realize the psychology of happiness at that point. And it was only a couple of years later when I was reading a book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. And he was not in the book, but he did an interview at Google. He was doing a talk at Google, and then he did an interview afterwards. And he said, there's a definition that I want everybody to realize, that in North America specifically, we raise our kids to think that, condition them to think that when I get a new job, when I get a new car, when I get a new house, then I'll be happy. When I hit a sales target, then I'll be happy. But what that is momentary pleasure. It's not sustainable. It doesn't allow our brain ever to feel happy. So all those stress hormones always stay with you. He said, what I want you to do is I want you to think about this, a new definition for happiness. Happiness is the joy you feel while striving for your full potential every day. And that was an aha moment for me, because I thought to myself, I've never thought of it that way. I always thought I had to accomplish a goal or else I was a failure. And there was no room to be happy in there. As a matter of fact, recently, very recently, I was at a conference and the speaker was talking about mental health. And he said, you know the difference between people who are depressed and normal people? And if you've never been truly clinically depressed, you won't understand this. But it was a beautiful sunny day. He said, see how sunny it is out today? I couldn't tell you whether it's a good day or a bad day because I'm incapable of experiencing joy in my life. That's what being clinically depressed means to me, is I can't experience joy. And this new definition for happiness, joy is the happiness happiness is the joy you feel striving to reach your full potential every day. Well, for me, I realized that every day I got to check the box. Every day I followed my process of becoming an Ironman. Every day I got one step closer to reaching my goal. I allowed myself to feel happy because I took another step forward. I wasn't saving it all up for the end. So that was a big, big moment for me, realizing how to be happy, right? Happiness is the joy you feel while striving for your full potential every day. So my first Ironman, I learned that anything was possible and to be better prepared. The funny thing is, when I was racing an Ironman Cozumel in 2015, when I was doing that race, I had said to myself, okay, I don't have more time to train. I've got to work and provide for my family. Training takes a lot of time. It takes like 600 hours a year to train for an Ironman. So I don't have more time to give. How can I knock off 2.5, 3 hours off of my time? Where can I find efficiencies? Well, I'm not a really great swimmer, but really, even if I went from my time of, an hour 20 to swim 4 kilometers, even down to an hour, that's only saving 20 minutes. But boy, if I take my bike ride that I think on that day was 8 hours and knock a couple hours off of that, and take my run that was 6 hours and knock a couple hours off of that, now we're talking. Now we're talking. I might qualify to get to the World Championships in Kona, Hawaii. So I learned another lesson. If you're ever going to do an event like this, never go to an event, a destination race, where your wife and kids or your spouse and kids or whoever's with you don't have an opportunity to have an enjoyable experience. A hotel room is not an enjoyable experience. When I went to Cozumel, I sold this to my wife like this. We're going to go on vacation, and for 2 days of that vacation, I'm going to do a race. But while I'm doing that race, you can sit at the pool with a margarita and you can watch and come out and cheer, because the bike race is going to go right by the front of that resort. Every couple hours, cheer me on and go back to having a drink. And it ended up being a great recipe for success in bringing my family along for a second journey into another Ironman. But what I learned from the first Ironman was be better prepared. And so I trained differently, I prepared differently, and I learned something about sodium. And that is how my body depleted sodium during a 12 to 16 hour workout day. And I brought these little salt tabs with me, and I brought them in my race belt, my run belt. And in those salt tabs, along with the salt tabs, I had a flask of Coca-Cola and I had a flask of water. That was all backup in case something bad happened. So I was trying to be prepared. Now, I had a great race. I had the swim time that I was looking for. I did my bike in 6 hours, just under. And I'm thinking, if I go out and do this run in 5 hours or less, I'm in good shape. I was targeting 4 hours, but I was giving myself grace of 5. I did the first half. I was on target. I did the first half in 2 hours. I'm thinking, that's it. I feel great. I'm going to get to Cozumel. I'm going to get to Kona. I'm going to get to the World Championships. And with 10 kilometers to go, it was a 2-loop course again. And Cozumel was awesome because all of the cruise ships were letting out, and the streets were lined with people. It was an amazing experience. They had no idea what you were doing and why you were doing it, but just having thousands of people line the street cheering you on because you were doing something crazy, that was awesome. A lifetime experience for sure. But here I am doing my run, and it was getting kind of stormy and rainy out. And as I'm running with about 10 kilometers to go, a rainstorm, heavy downpour came through. And I had selected the right run gear. I had self-draining shoes. So my feet weren't getting blistery because of the wet conditions. That was smart. But I was relying on pretzels at the aid stations to get calories and sodium. And the kids who were manning the aid station weren't smart enough to take the pretzels that were now floating cups, Dixie cups filled with water because it had just poured rain. They weren't smart enough to get rid of those and bring new ones in for the athletes. And I thought to myself, well, I've only got 10 kilometers to go. I can run that in my sleep. I'll just drink Coke and water at the aid stations and forget about food. Well, I made it about half a kilometer up the road, and I went to take a step with my right foot, and my foot cramped like this. And immediately I stopped, and oh my God, what was that? And then I went to lift my leg, my foot cramped, and now my calf cramped. Put my foot back down. Oh my God, what's happening? I did it one more time. Now my foot, my calf, and my hamstring were knotting up in a ball. What was happening was I was on a razor's edge. My body was on a razor's edge. I had depleted myself of so much sodium. I was relying on those pretzel sticks to give my body the sodium it needed immediately to continue moving. And this is where it gets dangerous in an Ironman. One of the places is that if you end up having this situation where your body starts shutting down, cramping is the first sign that your body is shutting down, and you're not near an aid station where people can help you and you're on your own, you run a very, very serious risk of having a very bad outcome at the race. Fortunately, I was prepared. I had brought my salt tabs. And I remember from when I was in when I was in Louisville, how difficult it was to start running again after I had stopped moving and walked. So I popped a couple of salt tabs, took some Coke and water because I had it as a backup with me. And I just kept moving forward, dragging my foot almost so it was flat on the ground. But as soon as I got to the point after about 5 minutes and the sodium kicked in, I could start lightly jogging again without everything cramping up. And within 15 minutes, I was back to my race pace again. And I was popping those sodium tablets. And because I was prepared, I ended up doing 11 hours and 27 minutes. That was almost 2.5 hours faster than my first Ironman. I had reached my goal. Now, my actual goal was 10.5 hours because that was the time in previous years that I had to achieve to get to the World Championships. Here's the thing, and this is the big lesson I took away from Cozumel, and I took that into my next race, my last full Ironman, which was Ironman Mont Tremblant in Quebec, Canada. You got to manage your expectations. See, as an amateur athlete, I don't know who my competition is. And sometimes athletes from around the world will pick a race where they think historically, not a lot of people show up to this race and I can post this time and I'll punch my ticket to get into the World Championships. Well, at my resort, I happened to notice these 3 guys that looked about my age. They were German, and they also looked like they were ex-Olympians. They were chiseled out of stone. And those 3 guys all came together, and they all posted a time of 9.5 hours. So even if I had hit my goal time of 10.5 hours, I wasn't going to the Ironman World Championships that year. I couldn't control who else was going to show up at that race. So the three big takeaways I've taken away so far from my Ironman experience that you can apply to your life is that with the right vision and the right process and the right metrics to prove your process works, anything is possible. Right? Next, be better prepared. Be the best prepared person you can in the room. Right now, I'm trying to start a YouTube channel. And I'm trying to be the most prepared person I can be. And it's going to get better over time. I promise you. I will get more experience. The guests will become more A-listers, if you want to call them A-listers, because we're going to create a destination where people want to show up and share their experiences with you, my followers, my subscribers. And I value that and appreciate that very much. The last lesson is manage your expectations, man, because you don't know what's coming around the corner. And if I had set all of my hope and dreams and happiness expectations on getting to Kona, and if I had posted 10.5-hour time and I didn't hit that time, can you imagine how upset I would have been? I can't even wrap around my head how distraught I would have been, as opposed to being happy that I had finished yet another Ironman with such a great time. But because, again, I came in and I learned to manage my expectations, it was like I was so proud of myself that I was prepared. I didn't DNF with cramping, meaning I didn't disqualify myself from the race. I was prepared. I finished the race with a personal best time of 10 hours and 27 minutes. And I tell that story all the time because it is an amazing accomplishment in what you can do with just a better process. You can't get more time in a day, but you can improve what you do with the time that you do have. Okay. So that was a lot to unpack. That was a lot to unpack about business and being better prepared and becoming an Ironman. Okay. So now, where are we right now? I've been speaking at corporate events for over 10 years. I wanted to create this YouTube channel for a reason. It's because I've realized that sometimes not everybody can resonate with the experiences of an Ironman. You don't have to be an Ironman to learn from one. But I think when I get into a room and I speak to somebody and we share ideas, we talk about the same problems, but we come at it with two different perspectives. I learn from that person and they learn from me. And my goal, and my hopes for this YouTube channel are that you will be that fly on the wall in this conversation. And that maybe there's something that you will take from these conversations, a tool, a trick, add it to your toolkit and be able to be the best version of you that you can be. And if you have comments or questions, put them into the comments so that I can respond to them and give you the most intelligent answer that I can possibly give you. Now, when I look at building a YouTube channel, I look at, I follow guys who post hour-long videos all the time. I watch guys build supercars. Shout out to Matt Armstrong. I watch Wild Homestead, a guy building a cabin up in Northern Ontario. And what's interesting about these YouTube channels is all of them invite you to come along this journey as they build something, they create something, and you feel invested. Well, I've got something that I would like to bring you along with. I want to invite you to become part of my journey. And I'm going to share something with you behind me. Which side am I on here? Right here is my first race bib, me crossing the finish line, and my 3 official Ironman finisher medals, followed by some great pictures of my kids, my family, their dogs, experiences that I've had with my family. I've got my book over here for now, but this space right here, this is where you get to be part of this journey with me. I have this audacious goal. I am this 58-year-old guy who, in anyone else's mind, has no business being on YouTube. But I have this passion within me to want to help people. I'm going to share one more story with you. But before I do, I've set this audacious goal of in 1 year, so it's November 1st, in 1 year from now, November 1st, 2025, I hope that you will enjoy the content, the interviews that I'm sharing with you to such a degree that you will subscribe to my channel. I have a goal of getting a silver plaque. You get a silver plaque from YouTube when you have 100,000 subscribers. And this space right here is designated for my first 100,000 subscribers. This space right here, that's my gold plaque. That's 1 million subscribers. Now, for those of you who don't know, there's a gentleman by the name of Rich Roll, who is also a podcaster. He's been doing it for 10 years. He's got over 2 million subscribers on his YouTube channel, and he does the exact same thing. He sits down and talks to people about his vegan lifestyle. He shares his struggles with addiction, his problems, and together he invites people onto his show so that they can have intelligent conversations and help people. And that's really what I want to do, is I want to be able to help people for as long as I can by having better conversations. I've always said the way to success in communication is ask better questions that demand better answers. So the format of our show, I literally took a format of taking 3 questions. 2 are easy and specific, and 1 is more open-ended, open for interpretation for each of those 4 areas of resilience, so that when I ask the same question to each person I interview, you're going to hear how somebody else interprets that information, how somebody else, what other perspective they might have, so that we can all learn together. Now, at the beginning of all of my episodes, I'm going to give you a backstory. Who is this person? Maybe you might know them already. You might have heard of them. What's their backstory? What's their struggles? What are they trying to achieve? And then let's talk about where have you struggled in all 4 of these areas, and how have you overcome those struggles? I think that's really the meat and potatoes of what this channel is going to be all about. Now, I've talked a lot, and I am very guilty of being a talker. But I invite you all to, if you like this video, if you like the channel, subscribe. That's the metric that I'm following. That's the proof that what I'm doing is actually working. The process is create a better video, release a new video every week, and over time, get better at your skill, get better at your craft. Now, I am as new to this as anybody has ever been on YouTube. I'm excited to start this journey. I'm excited to have you be a part of this journey. If you've stayed this long into this conversation, I know you're part of my tribe. And all I can say is that I will, if you invest in me, I'm going to invest back in giving you the best guests I possibly can, the best stories I possibly can, the best perspective I possibly can. And that's really all we can do at the end of the day. So, with that, that's this part of the journey. There's lots of other fun stories to unpack along the way, so I don't want to do it all within this background video. But hey, thanks for coming along with me. If you like what you heard, if you've watched the first couple of episodes, you like what you're seeing, be sure to tell your friends. That's how we're going to get to 100,000 subscribers in a year, is by sharing this with the people who we know, like, and trust, so that good things will, it's karma. Good things will be spread out into the universe. You put good stuff out, good stuff comes back. So hopefully that's what we're going to be able to do. Thank you very much. Remember to like and subscribe. Remember to check out our videos. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being a part of this journey with me. Have a great day.